Welcome, everyone. I am Andrew Kozlowski, and with me is my good friend, world-class bass player, music producer, and my co-host for the show this evening, Mr. Cool himself, Mr. Clyde Ballard. Clyde, how you doing?
Good, man, and thank you once again. And I want to say I'm so glad that so many people are still tuning in, that they feel that we're bringing some entertainment and some fun into their lives. It's a good thing. It's cool, you know?
Well, I'm hearing some wonderful things, some feedback about some of the guests we've had. Certainly, Mr. Marshall, Larry Marshall, was a favorite amongst people, and of course, Alton Fitzgerald White was a big fan favorite. And then last week we had a very special musician, right? That was your buddy,
Michael Fitzgerald, man.
Absolutely, and that gentleman will be back with us sometime in July after his big event to
the worldwide honoring of the Dalai Lama. We got to get back
it should be spectacular.
But tonight we have one of your favorite shows. I've been working with you a long time, and I know how you feel about Phantom of the Opera.
Well, I was actually involved in the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber on tour twice, and I was the guy who sang the Phantom stuff in that tour. So for me, it was the show has always been something special. Tonight, we have a guy who is going to be a lot of fun to talk to. We're going to get a lot of information about what it's been like working behind the scenes.
With Michael Crawford.
Yeah, with some of the greats.
All the greats.
Yeah, sure. He's been involved on Broadway with Phantom of the Opera for over 30 years. Pretty amazing when you think about it. And we should have a lot of fun. He has been the guy who's sort of been in charge of all the costuming. And it's a very, very special privilege to have with us Mr. Ron Blakely. Ron, are you there? There he is. How are you, Ron?
Welcome to
Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. We're thrilled to have you with us tonight. You know, Clyde, of course, and myself, we are thrilled to have you with us, and we're really looking to have some fun with this. We really think we're going to get a lot of good inside information about what's going on backstage, and we can't wait to hear about you and how your career developed and how this all came about. But first of all, I guess the number one thing I have to ask you before Clyde gets started is how have you been handling, obviously, the pandemic, the protests, just life in general in this world of ours?
Wow. That's how have I been handling it? You know what? I'm going to put it like this. I come from a religious family. And so, you know, the spiritual aspect of life was always important. I tried to never allow things to get to me because I always tried to stay focused in the spirit. And when I do that, it helps keep me grounded. I did a seminar at Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan, which is where I'm from. And I told the students, I said, the one thing you can do for yourself is try to find some sort of religious base. I said, because things aren't going to go the way you want it to go. Mm-hmm. I say, so you're going to need something to stay grounded and balanced on. So I find that keeps me grounded.
Pretty amazing. You know how many guests we have on that tell us either they got their start as a performer singing in some liturgy, or that they are so grounded, they keep grounded by the same way you just mentioned, staying involved spiritually. Pretty amazing, the amount of people, wouldn't you say, Clyde?
Definitely. It's important to have some type of spiritual or religious or hobby or something that you can focus into to give your life a direction, some meaning, and just balance. And
Ron,
yes.
If you don't mind, what we'd like to do is maybe start from the beginning. Let's talk about your youth a little bit. Where you grew up, what kind of schooling you had, and what got you interested in doing. Why don't you describe exactly what you do for Phantom, your title there, and then maybe start with that. Talk about your youth a little bit, what kind of schooling you had, what got you interested in doing what you're doing, and maybe that's a good place to get started.
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is thanks to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother always said, get a degree in an area that you enjoy or you feel comfortable with. And so I'll start off with that. But I graduated from high school. I mean, I did the junior high, elementary. I graduated from high school. And then I went to Michigan State. And when I went to Michigan State, I ended up acquiring a Bachelor's of Science degree in retailing of clothing and textiles. And when I finished at Michigan State, when I finished my bachelor's degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So something said, you know what, you should go over to the theater department, because actually with my background being in retailing, I thought 7th Avenue was going to be where I was going. Okay. But then I knew that if I got a master's in theater costume design, I could teach at any major university. So what I'm about to talk about is security. Everything that I've done has been for security, for myself personally. And so I knew when I started on the master's, I had the technical background in terms of sewing and pattern making, all that type of stuff. So if I went to get MFA in theater costume design, I had the background for that, and I was able to accomplish it, And then I came here. After going through Women's Wear Daily and finding a job, and the job was assistant technical designer for the Missy Modern Sportswear area for Macy's corporate buying office. So I came in one day, interviewed, and left. And
well, let's talk about that a little bit. You came here, and then one day you left.
I flew in. I can't remember the day in particular, but I flew in that morning. I did the interview, and I went back to the airport, and I flew out and went back home to Flint, Michigan.
Why?
Well, because I needed to get the job. I needed to get the confirmation from them first.
Did you think that you were going to get the job, or what?
Well, I knew I had what I needed to get it.
Okay.
No one knows why people make the choices that they make.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, and at that point, that was the only thing that I was thinking about. I didn't really look for another job. I just put that one out and waited to see what would happen. And I got the job.
Did they call you back? You got the call back?
Yes. That's why I'm here.
Before we go any further with the story, I have to ask. Now, you came from Michigan. It had to be quite a hit in the face to all of a sudden come into Manhattan. That had to be a bit of a hit for you, right?
Well, I was prepared for it.
Yeah,
because it was what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And since I've been here, I find that the experience is more of the truth of life. Mm-hmm. And so I had to get comfortable with a lot of stuff. I mean, I've learned a lot since I've been here, and I understand a lot since I've been here. But it was interesting because I had to change the way I thought. And even with the job, I had to realize that I needed to know how to do what these people need me to do, period. Mm-hmm. And so, I was ready for it. I was ready for the challenge.
How many years did you end up working for them?
We just finished 32 years.
No, wait a minute. No, I'm talking about the first job.
Oh, the first job?
Yeah.
The first job, I was there for maybe about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
And I became unsettled and annoyed, and I got a phone call that day. And the phone call came from a friend of mine named Stephen Jones, who I've been talking to Clyde about. And Steve, at the time, Steve worked with Harry Belafonte. And so Steve asked me how would I like to come on as the wardrobe supervisor for the company.
For Belafonte?
Yep.
Okay.
And I said, of course. And so I went back. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just went back, gave him my notice, and took the job because I knew I could do it. And that went on. I mean, you tour as long as he likes to. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the first trip was to Monte Carlo, so that was deep. That was deep.
Nice. Wow. Not a bad deal.
and then at that point, that was when I met. One night, there was a knock at the door because I dressed Mr. Belafonte. Mm-hmm. And I mean, getting him in and out of his costumes, what have you. But after one performance, there was a knock at the door. So I went to the door and opened the door, and lo and behold, there was James Baldwin.
Wow.
And I mean, I don't normally get excited and enthusiastic about all of this stuff, but I had to holler when I saw him.
I can understand that.
I hollered, and then eventually he came into the room, and him and Harry, had their meeting. But I stayed out of it most of the time. I do what I had to do, and then if someone else was around, then I would find someplace else to be.
Now, how long did you work with Harry Belafonte?
That was about 2 years.
Okay.
About 2 years. And then when I finished with him, when he decided he wasn't going to tour again, I had to decide on what was I going to do. So then I knew I had the background for Broadway. And so I just went around to the wardrobe supervisors and introduced myself. And
you mean at all the Broadway shows? At
all of the Broadway shows. And while I was doing it, everybody kept telling me that I needed to speak with Adelaide Lorino. And Adelaide Lorino was the production wardrobe supervisor for Miss Saigon, Les Mis, Phantom, Miss Saigon. But everybody kept telling me she was the one getting all of the work. So I made her my last stop. Mm-hmm. And I went in and I introduced myself, and she was the one who really brought me in, because at that point I did some substitution work up at Starlight Express, and then I did some substitution work with the original cast of La Cage aux Folles.
Now, Ron, about what year are we talking about now?
We're talking about probably the late 90s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But then at that point, she directed me to 2 shows, and then she told me that Phantom hadn't gone into production yet. But when Phantom goes into production, I'll inform you of that, and I'll bring you in. And I said, fine. So I did Starlight Express, I did La Cage aux Folles, and then I went home to visit my parents.
That would be late 80s you're talking then.
I beg your pardon?
That would have been late 80s then you're talking.
Well, you know what? You are right.
Yeah, because Phantom came in. Yeah, that's right. Was it 87? I think Phantom came in.
Yeah, it was
89 toward 90 is when we did the tour of Weber, and Phantom was already going. So,
yeah.
So yeah, it had to be 87 or so. So here you are now. You get a so you were with the original cast.
Oh yes.
Fine. So we're gonna have lots to talk about.
Well, it was a job. It was a job. I had the background to do it, and in these days and times, especially being a man of color, I don't want to go there. I hate going there, but
oh no. Feel free to say what you feel. I mean, everybody understands here. That's why we're doing this program. We want everybody to understand how greatness gets great. Right? You had to put up with stuff that other people didn't have to put up with.
Oh, yeah.
People should know that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to ever. I want to make sure I can work again.
Well,
don't incriminate yourself.
I think just saying that alone is enough for people to understand.
Well, I always try to stay above, and I've always expected more from people than I receive. Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, I'm coming to realize that, and it's kind of sad because I only expected from them what I expected from myself. Mm-hmm. And so, and then having gone to Michigan State University, part of the Big Ten, majority of the campus was Caucasian. I thought once I got out and I got around a lot of people would understand a lot of things, but it was surprising how much they didn't understand, so it's been an experience. Mm-hmm. It's been an experience. And I think you have to prepare yourself for the experience. Mm-hmm. You have to have something that, when it's seen, it has to be respected. So it's having the academic background, having the degrees and so forth and so on. It has benefited me, and I'm thankful for that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your early time with Phantom. Now, they brought you on as what when you first started?
Well, I consider myself a wardrobe technician and a dresser. Mm-hmm. And we do day work in the afternoons. And when you come in during the day, you're getting everything prepared for the evening performance.
Now, what time is that during the day?
We come in from 1 to 5.
Wow.
In the afternoon.
Before every show?
Before every show.
Wow. Now, what happens with the matinee? What time do you come in?
I mean, if they do a matinee, you come in at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Until 1 o'clock.
That's a long day.
It's
if you got a day-night show, that's a long day. I know.
But it's a long day.
Yeah,
long day. And then you do from 1 to 5, and then you have 2.5 hours for dinner. Mm-hmm. And then you come back and then you do the 8 o'clock performance.
Now, did you set up before you went to dinner for the night show?
No.
No, you do when you come back?
we have to be back at 7:30 every evening.
Mm-hmm.
And at half hour, you do your presets. You get everything set up for the show.
Right.
So I would come in and I deal with 4 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I deal with them in different costumes. So at the top of the show, I deal with one of the dancers. I have to preset the costume that he's going to change when he comes in, because he'll come off stage as a porter in a porter costume. I think I had a picture of the porter costume. It's all black, and he comes in and he has to get out of that. And once he gets out of that, he puts on a slave master costume.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he puts the slave master costume on, at that point, the set's changing. People are getting in and out of costumes. And Carlotta, which is the last person that I dress before the performance starts, she's already on stage set. Mm-hmm. So when the overture is played and then the curtain comes up and the woman is standing there with the head, that's the beginning of the whole trip after the auction scene.
Right.
But I have to get her set. So I have to be in place. So basically, as a dresser, I have to be in a certain place at a certain time to get particular characters dressed in costume so that they can do the performance.
A lot of work.
It's busy, but if you have
things moving fast, right? Very fast.
Well, it's moving fast. It's moving quickly, but when you have the background,
it's easy.
It works.
Okay.
Well, these are some pretty complicated costumes too, huh?
It all depends on the character.
Yeah.
Some of the costumes have a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I noticed the girl, Carlotta at the beginning of the performance, that costume had to be changed because a lot of the girls complained that it was too heavy. Because a lot of those costumes are heavy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So now it doesn't have the wire underneath, and the jewels aren't glass; they're plastic now. And then the shaping underneath is out of plexiglass, so it makes the costume lighter. But before, it was heavy. Some people deal with things differently.
Yes.
But
well, that comes to another question we have for you. And over the years, as you say, this is 32 years now that you've been on Phantom. Yeah. There have to be some favorites and that you've had going along the way that you've worked with. How about some of your favorite people that you've dressed or worked with during the time that you've been there, 32 years? Notice I didn't say the people that are not your favorites. I'm just saying some people that you really clicked with. Favorite people.
I mean, do you really want me to answer that question?
Well, I want you to answer your favorite people. I don't think that could hurt. Unless, of course, you're going to tell me, well, it's just a job. There weren't any favorites.
Well, the thing is that I think a lot of that has to do with the personality of the person and what's important to them.
Yeah, I know.
And so, I mean, there's a lot that I could say. You know what? You learn how to deal with people.
Part of the job, isn't it, for what you got to deal with, right?
I beg your pardon?
It's part of what you really have to deal with on a daily basis because an artist is very quirky. We get crazy before performance.
You got to deal with personalities.
Yeah.
You got to learn you have to learn how to put a lot of stuff in perspective and let it roll off your back. Because, and like I said to some of the stage managers, I said, these people are in their moment. These people are in one of the biggest moments of their lives. Mm-hmm. I said, but they don't realize I'm in my moment too. Yeah. And they sometimes people will say to me, you fuss over us. Why do you fuss over us so much? And I said, fussing is my job. You know, when you're dealing with a period piece, I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to get into the period, understand, and because what you're trying to make that person appear to be that before they go out on stage. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not, because some people think they know more than you. So sometimes you just have to let people be people. And
the right attitude. 32 years, you wouldn't have lasted that long in that environment if you didn't.
You got to put a lot of stuff in perspective. You got to learn how to deal with people, and you got to learn to accept people for who they are.
Yeah.
And then also too, you have to keep in mind that a lot of what you're going through has nothing to do with you. It's them. Mm-hmm. And it blew my mind to realize how a lot of people haven't really been around a lot of people. And so that blew me out, you know. But you have to understand and you have to accept everybody's on their own trip, you know. So it's an interesting challenge.
Lloyd, I know I'm hogging it a little bit, but I got to ask him this question because the kids that I teach would literally chew me out if I didn't ask him. Ron, who has been your favorite Phantom?
I knew that was coming.
It had to come because these kids will drive me crazy if I don't ask you that question.
Who was my favorite
Phantom?
Well, you know what? I'm going to be honest.
They all were.
They're all good in their own way.
Right.
They're all good in their own way.
All right. So I'll make it easier for you. This way it doesn't say anything. I'm going to name Michael Crawford.
No, I was going to say he was my favorite.
Oh, okay. You want to tell us
why was he your favorite? Why?
Because I felt that the type of emotion that was necessary to be emoted for that character, and considering the man and the trauma that he was going through, he was most able to project that.
Okay.
And then there were certain moments when he went into the lair, when he went into the lair, and he would go up against the I can't think of the word. But there's a part of the set that he leans up against. He was the only one that I felt who emoted a whimsy aspect to the character. A lot of people don't, and some of them aren't comfortable with it, that I find, which is interesting. Because it's just like the Don Juan scene. If you pay attention to the Don Juan scene is a sexual scene.
Yeah.
And so one day I stood in the wings and I watched it because I wanted to see what it was about. And I was really blown away. I was surprised. I was really surprised. I was surprised.
Okay.
Michael, I met at Radio City Music Hall.
Yes.
When he was doing the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber. I actually got to say hello to him backstage. I just thought his personality was he was very, very kind to the people he meets in the business and out of the business. So that's why I always felt like he was one of my favorites on stage.
Over time, I've gotten that impression.
Yeah.
And I think since he's been gone, when he does come back, and if I am able to get to him, you know, I try to speak to him and say something to him. But it's interesting. Like I said, it's interesting because a lot of these people are in their moment, so you don't really know what to expect when you're confronted by them or you confront them. Mm-hmm. But there are some wonderful people. I mean, it's an interesting experience. It's been an interesting experience. I mean, I've never been one to get enthusiastic about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But I mean, at the very beginning, Michael Jackson and Elizabeth Taylor came. What is his name? Oh, I mean, who else? I mean, Gayle King has been there. One night I was standing in the hallway, and it was when P. Diddy was doing Raisin.
Yeah.
And Nicole Kidman came.
Wow.
And, you know, I see the commercials, and I didn't really know what to expect. But one of the girls got her to come into the building. And she came into the building. She was the sweetest person I had ever met. She blew my mind. I kept thinking about the Vogue commercial that she does. And I was like, this girl, you're not going to be able to get close to her. But she was the sweetest person. She was one of the sweetest persons I had ever met. Same thing for Jennifer Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
Sweetest person I mean, just sweet person, you know.
Now, these kids are going to ask me this question too. Do you still get that rush of adrenaline when that overture starts?
Do I get the rush? Well,
I mean, that's a true test to that question, because after 32 years,
you learn to put things in perspective. I mean, for me, when I do listen to those things, I'm listening because they changed it.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm listening to hear if the change was really significant. And then I also try to understand if they're trying to keep up with London. Mm-hmm. And are they changing these things because these are the things that were changed in London? So it's always interesting when they change something, because to me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I feel like this particular production as a period piece should be left untouched.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I think it should be left untouched. And I think it's important that we try to project that, because coming to the theater is that. Coming to the theater is putting yourself in a position where you take yourself back.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start changing all of that, then to me, that's when you lose the significance. People, but then also too, doing the job put me in a position where I learned, I guess, the importance of the theater and the world we live in and the stuff we go through every day. What a wonderful moment to be able to go and sit and go away from it all.
Yeah, that's a magical 2.5 hours to release from the world for a while and get your mind off the things that are going on.
Well, that was another reason why I stayed with the show, because the show, for me, it had the technical aspect as well as the costume. And so having had the academic background, it put me in a position where I was interested in that. And I was interested in how they did magical things.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, I never understood how the Phantom disappears in the chair at the end. But finally, I had the opportunity to understand it. But in technical terms, that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because technically, I mean, it was interesting. I don't want to be given. It was interesting.
In Iran,
can't play any trade secrets.
I remember watching Channel 7 one night, and I saw Andrew Lloyd Webber on Channel 7 with Norm Lewis. Were you there when he also played the role?
Yeah, I was there. Yes, I was there. I beg your pardon.
How was that working? He was a good Phantom, right?
Well, it was difficult for me to respond to that because I haven't. You need to see it from the house. You need to see the whole thing.
The perspective is different.
Exactly. I mean, in terms of vocal, yes. I think maybe the range might have been a little bit too high.
Yeah, he was more baritone than tenor, so that would have been a little stretching it for him. But he's such a beautiful voice he had.
People loved him. People loved him, I heard.
They did love him, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Clyde, you a mess. The people on Broadway love Norm Lewis.
That's it.
Period. No matter what he does.
There's nothing he can't do.
They love him.
Well, he's a special guy, too. That's the other. He's one of these really nice men that cares about people. So, and he has an enormous talent.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Now, what about the ladies? You haven't spoken about any of the ladies, like the Christines. How about them? They're the ones that have the real costume changes, right? That's tough.
Well, to be honest, Christine is on stage more than the Phantom.
Yeah.
It's all.
I was going to say Sarah Brightman, and then I bit my tongue. I
mean, the thing is that, and like I say to most people, you have to understand the pictures that they see. So a lot of times, I'm trying to take the character that they've chosen to be a certain person and put her in that picture and see her in that picture. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have difficulty. In terms of the Christines, once you put that wig on their head, they all look the same. You put the wig on, they all look the same. And so there are some who are a little bit more. Some people aren't afraid to act. Mm-hmm. And so there are some who aren't afraid to act. And then there are some who, it's not that they're afraid, but I think they're trying to capture the character. And Christine is supposed to be a little girl. So there are certain movements that Christine does certain times that I find to be girlish and kind of co-edish. And so, but each girl does that particular thing differently. So once you put the wig on, they all look the same, but they have different things that they do differently in that particular role. I must say they all are fierce. Mm. They all can sing.
Oh, they better.
They're fierce. They're fierce.
I've heard a couple. They sure better.
But then also, too, like I said, it goes back to the perspective of the person and how they see this moment for themselves. Because, a lot of them, like I said, they're in the moment. So they're stars, so, and like for me, I know I work for Phantom of the Opera, but I try not to think about it because I don't want to allow myself to get caught up in that. Mm-hmm. There are moments when people question me about it, and I'll go, "Oh yeah, well, I do. That's what I do," But I always knew that I would have found some way to have a job that offered me. I don't want to say that kind of notoriety because that's not it. But it's I don't know. It's the kind of job I would have wanted. It's a reputable job. That's how.
Yes, very much so. Are there any projections on when the show might reopen?
Well, right now, the conversation is January.
January 3rd, I heard.
Yeah.
January 3rd is what they're talking about. I have never experienced anything like this before in my life.
Yeah, none of us have, Ron. It's very scary for people.
This is...
And, there's still the concern that when they do open, people are going to be afraid to come to the theater if they don't have a vaccine by then.
Exactly.
So
that is true.
It's certainly going to be a problem.
Well, but with this type of work, you can't social distance, And also, too, people are on stage and they're singing. So they're emoting and stuff is flying in the air. So it's going to be interesting to figure out how they come up with what's the same. But like you said, a lot of people are expecting a vaccine, and they feel like that's the only way because then people don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, the theater seats are so close together. So many people cramming into a theater. It's going to be very difficult for them. They can't operate at 50% capacity; they'll lose money. So it's just a bad situation for theater in particular. Cruise lines and theaters—they're the ones that have the big problems right now.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, to me, the things that they're doing now are things they probably should have been doing all along.
Yeah.
But it's the world we live in, and right now the world is in a shift. So I think that's what makes this whole experience kind of deep because, but then also too, it's the same thing that you and myself experienced when we were growing up, but we didn't pay attention to it because we were children.
Yeah.
And we were under the umbrella of our parents. Mm-hmm. So we weren't concerned. We felt we were being taken care of. But now it's happening again. I never thought we would be at this point again in life.
Yeah.
Ron, what would you say has been the most difficult costume change you've had to make on the fly? One where time might give you a little extra pressure.
Well, I'll use this example. Mm-hmm. One night we were getting Carlotta into her dress at the beginning of the show with the head.
Yep.
And the guy, I'm in the back of her and another guy's in the front of her. And the guy in the front zipped up her bodice. And when he zipped up her bodice, the pull came right off.
Whoa.
And the overture is playing.
Oh.
She's got to go on stage. What are we going to do? And so at that point, a lot of times people would be in the room. But at that point, I said, anybody that's in this room that doesn't belong here, get out. And Michael is the other guy who deals with her as well. And I said, Michael, the only thing we can do to get her on stage is to pin the front of that bodice all the way up.
Safety pins.
And that's what we did. We pinned that bodice up.
Wow.
And she went out on stage and she was a punk rock Carlotta.
Wow.
That's wonderful. Great story. Listen, you know what Clyde and I do. I think Clyde's giving you some background. We are part of the Josephine Foundation.
Exactly.
And we have provided many opportunities and scholarships over the last 18 years for people in the arts, young people in the arts. And so we obviously are involved with the education side of this also. What kind of advice, what 3 pieces of career advice would you give a young person that walked up to you and said, Ron, I want to be able to do what you do. I want to be able to land a job on Broadway working behind the scenes and using my art. What would you say to them today?
Run, right? Run away. No.
Man, you're giving me some deep questions here.
Well, let's supposing this is a real kid. You look at this kid and you can see by looking in their eyes, they're real. They really have a hungry. They want it. What do you tell that kid now?
Well, you first have to have a particular interest. Mm-hmm. And once you have, if your interest has anything to do with clothing and textiles, then that should put you in a position to try to find out as much as you possibly can about pattern making, sketching, because sketching will help you put things down on paper visually so people can see. And see, like with me now, I think if you put me in a room with some of these kids now, they're draping stuff on mannequins and cutting it as they drape. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I don't know if I can do that. But you have to have a lot of it depends on the person too, because you got to have a certain kind of frame of mind. You got to carry yourself a certain way. I feel like I haven't answered your question.
No, I think they're getting a lot of interesting information. I'm assuming you'd say certainly get your education, right?
Well, most definitely. I mean,
yeah, and you're talking about the intangible stuff that better be there if they want it.
Well, to have the background is most important.
Sure.
But in order to have the background, you got to have the interest. And in order to have, and once you get the interest, you get the background in that area. And as long as the background that you have can be done or used in a particular area, then I say go for it. But so many people have so many different ideas, so many different agendas, so many different ways of going about getting what they want. I mean, so it's a crazy situation, because some people work jobs and leave the floor that they're working on and go to the floor they want to be on. And they just create a spot in another department without even going through any kind of interview. So it's crazy. It's crazy. I
guess years ago the focus was on getting a job and keeping it for a long period of time, whereas today a lot of the younger people do jump from one place to another.
Well, my supervisor always says to me, I don't know what we're going to do when you're gone. And I always said to her, why do you keep saying that? and I said, because the only thing you're going to do is what you've been doing, But when you have the background, and for me, it's the education. I mean, I'm glad I have the education, not just because of the job, but because of myself personally, period. Because when I am faced with some sort of adversity, I can feel good about myself and what I've done for myself. I think people forget about the experience of life. They're busy thinking about being a success and making a name and so forth and so on. But sometimes you have to pay attention to being able to just live a decent life. And so for me, that was basically all that I've ever tried to do, was to live a decent life and hope that people would see the good and see that I should be in another place or doing another thing. And that hasn't really taken place for me at this point. But I have the background to do what I do, and I can do it. And that's important.
Oh, you obviously do it, and you obviously do it well, or you wouldn't be there 32 years. Last question, and of course you led into it a little bit for me. What's on the agenda? What does Ron Blakely want in the next couple of years? What do you want to do? Are you going to stick with this? Is this it for you? You're going to retire here someday, or are you really thinking there's something more you want to play with, designing or something else on your mind?
Wow, I see. You always ask those challenging questions. I'll put it like this. At this particular point in time, having the time that I have, it has given me the opportunity to think about where I am and what I'm doing. And it has put me in a position where now I can think about maybe it is time for something else. I think, like I said before, we're living in a shift right now. The world is shifting. So I'm trying to a certain extent, figure out where that place is. I haven't really found where that place is. So
where that something else is intangible right now.
It's intangible right now, but I do have a job and I do have the background to do that type of work. So the show must go on.
Right.
Well,
that's right.
Ron, we sure do hope that you enjoyed visiting with us. And boy, I hope you will come back and have some more challenging words for our great audience that's listening, filled with a lot of young students that look up to guys like you that have accomplished what you have over the years. I can't even thank you enough for coming on with us today and sharing your career and your thoughts, your insights, particularly about what goes on behind the scenes at Phantom of the Opera, and also about your life and how you've looked at things and how you've survived and become as good as you've become. We appreciate you being here, and I hope you will come back to see us again.
And Ron, do you still take special people on special tours, if and when the show opens again?
If and when the show opens. Usually, I try to do, whenever I have the opportunity, I like to do it in the evening, right before the performance, because I like for people to have an opportunity to see the stagehand setting the stage.
Okay.
So usually the stagehand starts setting the stage at 6:30. And so that way I can turn it into an academic experience, and I can tell people. And then, so when the show opens and certain things happen,
they can appreciate it.
Well, they'll know why.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
But then it also makes the production interesting to see how the magic it takes place.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, Ron,
thank you.
We appreciate it. Stay safe throughout this mess, and we'll see you over at the Majestic Theater sometime in the near future, I hope.
Well, let's hope so. Well, of course. Yes. Okay, Piangi.
I knew he was going to say something like that.
I see you, Piangi.
All right. You be well, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ron Blakely. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Well, Clyde, that gentleman is very special.
Definitely.
When you think
One of
about,
a kind.
Yeah, when you think about his life experience and what goes on behind the scenes, and you can tell that it's the way he approaches things and how he reads people. That's why he's been able to stay. Yes, of course, he's fantastic at what he does.
Sure.
But the way he's able to read people, artists, as well as anybody, that we get a little crazy before performances or at rehearsals and things. And sometimes
he hasn't been here 32 years because he's a nice guy. He's been there 32 years because he does his job well.
He's a talented man who really knows what he's doing inside. That's for sure. So
we got to get him to come down someday, maybe, and do a little talking to some of the students at the Josephine Foundation.
I think that would be a fantastic match for sure. We have to work that out. Well, a big time thanks to our special guest tonight, Mr. Ron Blakely. Don't forget to join us next week when we have a very, very special guest joining with us. A dear friend of Clyde and myself is joining us. He's a special songwriter and singer, Mr. Billy Ayers, and he'll be telling us about his organization that helps a lot of young people in New York and about a new song he has coming. You won't want to miss this, that's for sure. Stay advised of all the events by following the Josephine Foundation on our Facebook page and Instagram account. And on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Clyde Ballard, our producer, Mr. Gio Vitozzi, and myself, peace, strength, and love until we see you next week on Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and stay bright.
Amen.